Werewolf Fight Club, or the Werewolf Knew Karate. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I studied karate for about 3 years when I was younger, but I gave it up when I got married because my husband told me he was scared I was going to beat him up. I said never, but he reminded me that I once got into a fight with a Dogman. Of course, that's the way he puts it, but not me. I say a karate master in werewolf form came and kicked my butt to teach me a few different lessons, including one in humility. It was not a Dogman or any other kind of wild animal, and you could tell that by its behavior. For instance, it did not pounce on me and attack the way an animal might. Instead, it took my other set of fighting gloves and put them on before assuming start position. This being not only possessed human intelligence, but it knew all the customs of karate. It could not have been a wild animal. It had to be a human appearing in his wolfen form. All of this happened before my husband and I met, but not all that long before. In fact, I would say this had to happen first, before a mature guy like my husband would have even been interested in me. See, I was a spoiled brat before I met that Dogman or werewolf. I was a bully, too. You know the classic story of the kid who gets pushed around and then learns karate so she can defend herself? Well, that was not me. I took karate lessons so that I could push the other girls around in my college. We were all bitches, but I was queen bitch. That's why it's fitting that I was taught my lessons by a dog man. I used to practice karate in the woods with a friend of mine, but I guess I bossed her around too much. By the time this story happened, I was practicing alone. When I saw a dog looking out at me from the bushes, I invited him over. It really surprised me when he walked out of the woods on his hind legs. This guy had muscular shoulders, weightlifter arms, and he had hands too. But on top of those humanoid features was a dog head that had that expression like the Doge coin dog. Do you know what I mean? It had that dog face but a furry muscle man body. I admit that I was curious, but I was more scared than anything else. I was about to make a run for it when I saw the Dogman go for my spare set of fighting gloves. These are padded gloves, but not as padded as boxing gloves. When I saw him pull the gloves over his clawed fingers, I realized that this was not a dog, but some kind of a wolfman. I also saw that it was intelligent, and since it was covering its claws with my gloves, I got the feeling it wasn't there to tear me up and eat me. Then the Dogman took a back stance and held his fists in front of him, as though he were ready to fight karate. When I say he took a back stance, I mean that he had one leg bent in front, but his weight was resting on his back leg, held straight underneath him. It's a good stance for defense, and so I felt even less threatened by the creature than before. He wanted to spar, but he was ready to take defense and let me show him what I had. Instead of feeling scared, I began to get excited. I was going to fight some kind of a dog-headed werewolf man, who was cooler than me, right? And maybe I'd learn a move or two that I could use to keep the other girls in line. I was a real bully in those days, and that was the way I thought. This wolfman was really only around my size. At least that was how he made himself appear to me at first. I was very confident as I took my place opposite the werewolf opponent, and we both bowed our heads. When I lifted mine, I lashed out with a mean fake-out to the belly, then a blow to his exposed throat. Only when I faked him out, he didn't even react. And when I attempted to strike him under his doggy chin, he easily moved to the side and allowed my own momentum to carry me into his reach. From there, he barely needed to do much to add to my momentum, sending me flying off balance into the bushes. When I got up, the Dogman or werewolf was gone, and so were my spare gloves. I had no serious injuries, but my face got all scratched up, and it took weeks to heal. Since I had been such a bully to everyone, nobody had any sympathy for my predicament. It was pretty humbling, and it was a lonely period. I stopped even trying to keep friends. I knew that everyone had decided that I wasn't worth the effort. That was when I met Phil. He found me sitting alone in the library. He was not the type I would have let chat me up earlier on, but by this point with my scarred up face, I was glad for the company. I decided to let him date me for a while, at least until I got my confidence back. Somehow, even after my face healed and I felt better, I was still with Phil, and now he's my husband. None of that would have happened if the Dogman hadn't sent me flying into the bushes. Oh, about that. This couldn't have just been a Dogman. This had to have been some kind of shapeshifter, don't you think? Or maybe someone who could make me think I was seeing something that wasn't really what I thought I was seeing, or did I say that right? His fists were real, that's for sure. And I never got my fighting gloves back, so he wasn't just a phantom. I think that what I got thrown around by that day was probably some kind of a Lugaroo or Rougarou, even though I was up north and not down by Louisiana. I mean, it had to be some kind of a wizard or a shaman or brujo, because he wasn't just there to kick my butt in a fight. He was there to teach me a life lesson. And that was how I got schooled. In the Werewolf Fight Club.
Find that link in the description, honey.
Dogman capsized my kayak, as told to and read by Peter Bernard. I've told this story to a few friends and I got laughed at once, ridiculed the second time, and the third time I was told that I hadn't seen a Dogman, I had seen a Sasquatch. At that point, I gave up trying to tell friends about what happened at all. I was going to remain silent forever, but I figured nothing would be lost by me adding an anonymous version of the events to your show. Okay, I was out kayaking in the Everglades with some friends while on spring break back when I was just 21 years old. My friends were also about the same age, and their names were Rocco, Jelka, his girlfriend, and Karina, who was my girlfriend. Rocco and Jelka were Croatian, and I forget why they were in America, like a student exchange or something. But we were really only friends for that 1 year while they were here. Now we keep in touch on Minds a bit, but I haven't asked them in person to tell this story, so the less said about them the better. I'm not trying to expose them to ridicule, just to tell my story. So, we were kayaking through the Everglades without a guide, which is not something you should ever do. We were idiots, but that doesn't mean you have to be. The thing that happened to us was so weird that it probably might never ever happen to anyone else ever again, but we weren't even prepared for any of the well-known dangers down there either. And by not prepared, I mean both in terms of equipment or mentality. Okay, I have no idea exactly where we were, except that there were trees on either side and it was a long body of water. Sometimes the trees would come up super close to the boat and we could see the little lizards crawling all over them like cockroaches. Who knows how many snakes and other dangerous animals we were right up next to, but too lost in our own little world to even notice. Then again, we were so loud that we probably scared most everything away. I thought it was kind of cool how in some places the roots of the trees were all above ground. I guess they hadn't always been, but the water constantly flowing changes many things. We were having too much fun to notice that it was getting later. Karina told me she was seeing eye shine coming from inside the roots looking at us, and I thought she was joking. It sounded like she was doing her fake scared voice, but it turned out that sounded the same as her real scared voice, and she started getting me a little scared too. I figured they were alligators or snakes or that kind of thing. We decided to make a turn-off, thinking it would lead us back towards civilization. We were more than a little wrong about that. So the night started coming on, and we were kayaking with no compasses or maps or idea where we were heading. It was already getting hard to see in front of us. Rocco suggested we get out and camp, and the other three of us shouted to him that he was a moron. We kept rowing, growing pretty tired. I know I felt like my arms were going to fall off, and I was in the best shape of the four of us. We were exhausted and decided to try to nap there on the water. I know that was not a good idea. We were supposed to take turns sleeping. I don't know, when you're really tired, your ability to reason becomes fractured. So, I don't know what happened exactly, but the next thing is I'm waking up because I've been hit from below by something. I screamed and was very disoriented waking up. It looked like everyone else was waking up too, but it was so dark I might have imagined that. I had my flashlight out in a second, shining it around in the water and not seeing what bumped me. I told everyone what happened and asked if alligators did that. Nobody knew. Somebody said I had just imagined it in a dream, and then in the middle of a very loud splashing sound, a dog rose up out of the water and started climbing on top of my kayak. We all screamed, and I started to beat it back with my oar and then with my fists. The thing turned me over and I was entirely submerged, then back up in the air again. I could see absolutely nothing under the water and could barely make any more out in the night air. Rocco came close enough to hit the water wolf hard a few times, and the thing simply dropped down into the water like a dead weight, disappearing completely. That did not happen. Dogs are not fish. Karina was becoming delirious. With another loud splashing sound, we saw the creature emerge from the water onto the shoreline. It was a dog, and it was huge. We could smell wet dog all over, and it was nasty. We watched as the dog shook himself off, water spraying everywhere, and then, to our great surprise, he stood up on his hind legs. We were now looking at the back of a 6 or 7 foot tall creature, covered in fur and dripping wet. I shone my flashlight on the animal and it turned around and squinted into the light, and then it screamed at us. I felt like it had just slapped me around, and I cried as I started paddling out of there. That creature had scared me more than I had ever been scared in my life, and I paddled so hard, using reserves of strength far greater than I should have had. We all paddled, and we were truly panicked as the creature decided to follow along on the shoreline. We could see him some of the time. Then he would be out of sight behind trees, and we would wonder if the horror was over. Then we would hear him in the brush, and we'd start paddling faster and faster. One time he ran ahead of us and dove in the water. We had no idea what to do and stopped paddling. I think someone tried to paddle backward against the current. The dog just swam across in front of us to the other side, then continued along, trailing us on our journey. We soon saw why, as there was no passage on the right coming up for a while. Of course, the Dogman would have known that before reaching the spot. This was a creature in his own habitat, and we were very far from ours. Rocco thought the creature was hurting us and said we should not follow it. I asked him where else we could go except down the river, since it wasn't like we had a helicopter. He started bickering, and the 2 women started fighting as well, and then the Dogman roared. That shut us up. We paddled dutifully from then on, not speaking, trying not to even think. Morning came, and Karina noticed we hadn't seen or heard the dog for a while. We eventually found a place to land near some buildings and wandered from there until we were suddenly in some town where we got ourselves breakfast. And that was that. We were just back to civilization like nothing had happened. And really, it almost was like nothing had. We could have lost our lives, but we didn't, and so it might as well have been a dream. Who ever heard of a werewolf in the Everglades? And who ever heard of an aquatic dog that attacks boats from underneath? Even people who believe in Dogman aren't going to believe in a story like that. And yet, that is exactly what I remember happening the night I almost got drowned by Dogman.
It's a classic pullover, play with the scary stories, got it. It's a classic pullover, put it in a stand or go to go. Available in white, black, navy, gray, or pink. Link is in the description.
Sunday morning, Dogman has told to Peter Bernard. Dear Scary Stories, this is a story that happened when I was a kid in the early 1970s.
My parents went through a rough patch for a while and left us with our Aunt Ida, who was very strict compared to what we were used to. She also used to preach a lot at us and make us go to church, but she never came along with us, and we saw that as kind of hypocritical. Our parents weren't religious, so we were very unaccustomed to church and the culture surrounding it. I don't remember ever being up early on a Sunday before we went to stay with Aunt Ida. So one Sunday soon after, my sister and I decided that instead of walking to church as we had been instructed to, we would wander off into the forest, which I remember was covered in just a couple inches of snow. We had a lot of fun. Then my sister noticed the time on her Minnie Mouse watch, and we realized we had better start heading back to Aunt Ida with some story or another about what we had learned in church. My sister had a small Bible with her, and she started flipping through, looking for an interesting story we could say we heard the preacher tell us. I remember she was walking along kind of how people do now with their telephones, just staring at what they're reading, not watching where they're going. She walked right into a big tree branch before I could warn her. Then she was down on the ground, crying and holding her head. I tried to comfort her, but there's really nothing you can do in that situation except wait for the pain to subside a bit, then get back to walking home. She was crying that she didn't know what to tell Aunt Ida about how she got all covered in snow. What would she say if she got a bruise on her forehead? My sister was acting like the worst thing in the world had just happened. And then, the worst thing in the world happened. Something large pushed its way through some trees and landed hard on the ground near us. It let out a snort so loud I thought there was a horse standing there. But when I looked, I didn't see a horse. Oh, it was as tall as a horse, probably taller, but it was reared up on its hind legs, and its front legs looked almost more like a man's arms. The chest resembled that of a man as well. The thing is, it couldn't have been a man, because it had the head of a dog. A snarling, angry dog. I remember it was dark, and it was covered in fur. It was not a mangy bear, because the fur was even all over. We ran the rest of the way back to Aunt Ida's, and I saw it trotting after us several times. Each time I glimpsed the monster, it was always on its hind legs. Although it chased us more than half the way, it never overtook us, which I'm sure it could have done. I guess we were lucky it came across us when it wasn't hungry. We cried to Aunt Ida that we had seen a wolfman and it chased us. She asked us why we were in the woods, and we were too upset to lie. So we told her we had skipped out on church. Aunt Ida told us that wasn't the wolfman we saw. It was the devil, and we were lucky he let us off this time with only a warning. Needless to say, we were up early for church the next Sunday, but we didn't walk near that woods ever again after that. Aunt Ida had one of the neighbors drive us to church with their family. And so we never ever again saw the Sunday morning Dogman.
Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button. Or Join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.